Satsang, this meeting is a meeting seemingly a worldly meeting, but it's actually a non-worldly meeting. It is a meeting of truth. It is a meeting of the self with the self recognizing itself, the self reveling in itself, the self contemplating itself. And the way this meeting goes is via your questions. Whatever questions you have, they may seem to you to be personal questions, but in fact, you're asking questions that relate to all of us. They are not just meaningful to you. Sometimes they may even be more significant to others than to yourself, strangely enough. So your questions are welcome, and that is the way in which you can explore and let's say take advantage and benefit of this meeting. I don't like to give discourses about non-duality, about Advaita, but I'll just say a few words that our true nature is wholeness. It's undivided beingness, undivided, seamless presence. And at the mind level, there are experiences, meaning there are perceptions, thoughts, sensations. And these mind events are never a problem, are not a problem, except when you mistake yourself to be a person, you mistake yourself to be a mortal body mind. So the contemplation in Satsang is the contemplation of wholeness, of non-division, non-duality, meaning the limitlessness of the self, the limitlessness of truth, the limitlessness of what I truly am, I as consciousness. So one could say that it is as if there are two dimensions. There is the dimension of the mind, meaning objects, perceived world events, perceived bodily sensations, and perceived thoughts, memories, and images. That at that level, there seems to be an objective quality where various forms are different. They're not one. They're not one. They seem to be separate. So one could say that there is that one dimension, the dimension of the mind. But then there is also the dimension that is non-phenomenal, the dimension that recognizes or that cognizes the world body mind events. And it is this cognition that is the undivided wholeness. And although the mind impressions seem to be separate and different, they really find their sameness, they find their unicity in your recognition of the wholeness of consciousness. So I will not say much more than that. That's good enough for now concerning non-duality Advaita. So whatever questions you have, then we can contemplate whatever questions you may have. And you can pose your questions in two ways. You can pose your questions by speaking your question or by writing your question in the chat box. There is a chat box, and you could write your question in the chat box. So if you have any questions. Hello, Arshit. Oh yes. So this is a question from you that you sent me. Is there a difference between spontaneous, thoughtless statement versus meditated, informed statement that we make? So the question again is there a difference between spontaneous, thoughtless statement versus meditated, informed statement that we make? So Arshit, the statements that we make have a source. They arise out of two possible sources, let's say, out of two possible points of views, let's say, which are relevant to the non-duality teaching. One of the source of the statements that we make, which we are all very familiar with, is the me. There is an impression that I am a person. And as a person, I am perceiving an external world, body and mind. The mind may be internal, but it's still a relationship of a separate subject to separate objects. And the statements that are made from that position are statements that are statements. And so the statements that are made out of that position of a separate subject and a separate world, body, mind are statements that are referred to as coming from ignorance. Because these statements are tainted with the belief and with the sense of me, of a separate person, of a separate consciousness that is separate from other consciousnesses. So this impression, the statements that are made out of this impression are statements that are tainted with the sense of separation. And overall, these statements, they maintain the sense of me, and also they are unhappy. They lead to conflict and discord. Now, there is another possibility for statements to be coming from our understanding, our realization of what we are. Meaning statements that come from our deep understanding of our wholeness. Our deep understanding of the reality and universality of consciousness. Statements that come from this understanding have in them the certitude, the deep understanding, and it's not a conceptual understanding, it's an experiential understanding, that I am what you are, that I am thou, I am the self, I am reality, that you are, and that this reality is not divided. There are no separate divisions in consciousness. And so the relationship and the statements that are made from that position are statements that are infused with love, infused with the recognition of truth, the recognition of the self. So it's important to understand what is the source of your statements. When you are, for example, experiencing anger, fear, envy, jealousy, and you're making a statement out of that place, you are making the statement out of a place of ignorance. When you are experiencing that you're missing something or lacking something, or that you need something, you must have something in order to be happy, these statements are coming from ignorance, meaning they're coming from the belief that you are a limited mortal entity. And only upon coming to the revelation and the realization of what you truly are, only then will your statements be infused with the love, beauty, freedom, intelligence, and wisdom of the self, the happiness and the freedom of the self. So coming back to your question, the way you have written it, spontaneous, thoughtless statements depends what you mean by thoughtless. Because a statement, in a way, is a thought. Right now, I am expressing certain statements, let's say, and I'm expressing them via thought. So these statements are not thoughtless because they are actually thought. But what they are pointing to and what they're arising from, they're pointing to a place of peace, a place of freedom. They're not arising from a thought. They're arising from the self. They're arising from consciousness. And they are expressing consciousness. They're speaking of consciousness, not rehashing some thing that was read about consciousness, but speaking directly from the experience of consciousness, and therefore pointing directly to consciousness. So this expression, that what I'm sharing with you right now, these statements are thoughts, but they're thoughts pointing to that is beyond all thought. Pointing to that is the source of all thoughts. pointing to that is not a thought, that is not a phenomenal event, that is not something that you experience. So when we speak of spontaneous, thoughtless statements, the spontaneity of a statement arises out of the freshness of the self. One could say that consciousness is spontaneous. Moment by moment, it is ever fresh. Like this very moment right now, Archit. This very perception is completely new, has never been experienced before. It is spontaneous, and it's arising freshly in complete freedom. It's a complete expression that has nothing lacking to it. And one could say that it is thoughtless because it is not the result of anything. The freshness of this moment, the freshness of this expression, is not the result of anything. It is a spontaneous expression of consciousness. Consciousness expresses itself freshly. Then you talk of meditated, informed statements. There are some statements that we make that are informed statements, meaning we've studied the topic, we've studied the subject. If, for example, we are studying the habitat of the white heron in the swamps of Florida, we've studied the habitat of the heron, the flight patterns of the heron, and their mating habits and their feeding habits, etc. So we can make some informed statements about the heron, or about if we studied trees or rivers or jet engine. We can make some informed statements about these subjects. But the informed statements that we are making are about phenomenal events. When it comes to statements about consciousness, about truth, about reality, they're not informed statements. They're statements that are arising directly from the self. They're direct expression of truth. And they're not a gathering of information. Of course, in your contemplation of truth, first of all, you contemplate, what am I truly? And if your contemplation is correct, you will come to the understanding that I am not a man or a woman. I am not a form. I am not a mortal body mind. You will come to the revelation, to the understanding that I am consciousness. Awareness, presence, that has no gender, it has no age, no size, no focal point, no beginning, no direction. So your contemplation will lead you to that understanding that I am awareness, aware presence, consciousness. And your deeper investigation of consciousness will reveal to you that the consciousness that you are is universal. That the consciousness that you are is not limited or contained in any body, mind, in any form. That the consciousness that speaks is the consciousness that hears, is this one consciousness. That I am thou and I am that. Only one I, the universal I, that we all refer to as I. So that is a contemplation, but it's not information. Via this contemplation, you come to revelation. You come to an insight, a non-conceptual insight. That of course you can express like I'm expressing myself now. You can express it conceptually. But what you are expressing conceptually is non-conceptual. What you are pointing to via concepts, via words, via expression is beyond concepts, beyond words, beyond expression. Well, I hope I answered in some way your question, Archit. Please let me know if there is any follow-up question or if some clarity has come to your question, if I have understood correctly your wording. So Arshit, you're right. Thank you. Just a follow-up question. Would it always be that spontaneity is related to the vantage point being with consciousness? Not necessarily. You could answer a certain question spontaneously or express yourself spontaneously without necessarily knowing yourself as consciousness, without necessarily abiding as the self. Somebody could ask you which way is north, and you say it's this way. So that could be like or somebody may ask you 75 times 62, and you say 480. Maybe that's a spontaneous answer. You may be right, you may be wrong. So a spontaneous expression does not mean it is coming from your knowingness, knowing yourself as consciousness. And also consciousness, knowing yourself as consciousness, meaning knowing that I am this aware presence, may sometime a certain question may be posed to you that may require for you to ponder, to sort of hang with it and sort of have the dust sort of settle until there is clarity about your understanding of the question, and therefore you're expressing yourself out of that clarity. But you're always expressing yourself out of clarity, not out of thought, you see. So to come back to your question, and a spontaneous expression does not imply self-knowingness. And self-knowingness does not mean that all expressions are spontaneous. There may be expressions that are more paused, and they may express themselves via thought. But what you are sharing, I'm talking about when you are talking about truth, what you are sharing is your direct experience, your direct understanding. What matters is that you do not mistake thoughts that you have about consciousness or about truth or about the self, that you do not mistake these thoughts to be the reality. Because reality, meaning consciousness, is not a thought. It is, let's say, that to which and out of which thoughts arise. Yes, so you can express yourself, of course, via thoughts. But when you are talking of consciousness, about consciousness, when you're pointing to that, you may be using thought, but you are pointing to an experience that is beyond thought. Because thought cannot know itself. Only consciousness is knowing. Consciousness can know thoughts, but a thought cannot know consciousness. The perceiver can know what is perceived, but the perceived cannot know the perceiver. So I wouldn't be so concerned about whether I'm expressing myself with spontaneity or not. I would focus more on whether I have a certainty, I am reaching a certainty about what my true nature is, what I truly am, as opposed to how I am expressing myself. So do not, rather than contemplating how I'm expressing myself, whether I'm expressing myself spontaneously or not, contemplate what is it that is expressing itself. What is this I? What is the self? What am I? And once there is clarity about that, then you will come to the understanding that there is complete freedom. Consciousness is completely free in how it chooses to express itself. God is complete freedom. And in contemplating what I am, you cannot rely on thoughts. You can rely on your direct experience. Your direct experience is pre-thought. What you truly are is the freedom of being, the borderless presence of the self. And that is not a thought. Okay, Arshit, I hope okay. Hello, Isaac. Isaac, you're right. What you give us is taking me to a place where there are no more questions. The rest is silent space. Just one answer remains. Yes, the destination of our contemplation, Isaac, is this one destination, which is peace, love, beauty, happiness, freedom. All questions having been answered, there is peace, because a question is looking for an answer, and until the question gets answered, it's still on board. Even when it's answered partially, there is still a remaining part of the question that is looking for an answer. So it's important that your question meets its full answer, not some sort of compromise, but really gets answered, because it's only when your question gets really answered that it comes to rest. There may be another question that may arise. Then that question then will need to also be brought up and be addressed and be contemplated until also that question comes to its full answer. A full answer to a question, the way you recognize a full answer to a question, is that the full answer to the question ends the question. And yes, the contemplation of the self is what is it about? What is the reality? What is the reality of my experience? What is the reality of the universe? What is it that is true and real? It's not, the question is not what is fictitious, or what do the Buddhists believe, or what do the Taoists believe, or what do the people in Costa Rica believe, or what do, no, that's not the question. In Advaita, in non-duality, the question is, what am I truly? What is the reality? What is the reality? What is the reality of this experience? What is this unhappiness that I'm experiencing? What is the root cause of it? So this is the contemplation. And the questions that arise around this core question, what am I truly? Why is there unhappiness? Why am I suffering? These sorts of questions are the core questions that, if we brush them under the rug, which we could do, all which we are doing is postponing, because the question hasn't really been answered. We're sort of like ignoring it, but that doesn't mean that we are free from it. It's still there, lurking in the background, sort of, maybe it's arising in our sleep, and we're tossing and turning in bed. Or you cannot brush your important existential questions under the carpet. Instead, you have to really bring them out and have them, come to the light of contemplation, and to look at them and find, gee, what is the way to approach this question? And the question is, what is the reality of my experience? And when you look at this question, Isaac, you come to, if the contemplation is done correctly and deeply enough, you will come to the understanding that the reality of my experience is I. Not I, Isaac, I, a man, I, this person, I, 30 years old, I born here, and no, the I that, the reality that is I, that I am, consciousness, awareness. We know from our contemplation that without awareness or consciousness, I use those two terms synonymously. Without consciousness, there is no such thing as a thought or a perception or a sensation. There would be there would be no reality. We refer to reality as that is the ultimate knower of this experience, because obviously, even if this experience is a dream, it is not nothing. There is a reality that knows it. And that reality we refer to as consciousness. And we know that it is I that am hearing these words right now. I hear these words right now. But the confusion we make is we believe this I is a man or is a woman or is, 40 years old. No, the I that truly hears these words is I consciousness. And that is completely genderless, ageless, formless, the reality of all experiences, the one reality that dreams all dreams, perceives all perceptions, but does not depend on anything it experiences. Meaning, the I is freedom itself. You see. So until there is complete clarity about that, we continue to contemplate whatever arises question-wise, feeling-wise, sensations-wise, because it is in the contemplation of what arises for us that the ignorance can dissolve in the light of our understanding. And you cannot fake peace and happiness. You cannot fake it. Maybe you can fake it for a day or two or three or a week or whatever. It has to be real. And any happiness, peace or happiness that depends on anything is not the real peace and happiness, because things change and suddenly the peace that you experience or the happiness that you experience because you won the lottery, then that's gone. Now, maybe your health is a problem. Oh goodness, I have all this money, but I can't enjoy it because my health is a problem. So the peace and happiness that depends on any condition is not the peace and happiness. It has to be complete freedom. So freedom, peace, and happiness come hand in hand. They are one whole. Okay, Isaac. Nice to see you. So if there are any other questions. Oh shit, you're right. As I contemplate who am I, is it good to contemplate on how the bodily functions get performed? Breathing is effortless for my brain. No, no, Arshit. In contemplating who am I, you don't need, and it's really useless to contemplate how the bodily functions. Now, if you're interested in medicine and healing and the physical body mind, you could look at how the body functions. But in the contemplation of the self, you do not need to contemplate the body, the world, or the mind, how it functions. But what you can contemplate is, what is my experience of the body? You see, what is my experience of the body? So we can do that right now, Arshit, if you care to. So you ask yourself, well, what is the body? And if you go to thought, then you're going to go to all what you have learned, what you have read, what you've heard, what you've been told about the body. But if you go to your experience, you ask yourself, what is my experience of the body? Not how the body functions, but what is my experience of the body? What is the body? You will come to the body as bodily sensations. For example, if you have a toothache, or you sense your arm, or you sense your chest, or your head, or your shoulders, are bodily sensations. You will also come to the understanding that you also know the body as perceptions. Like you look at yourself in the mirror, you see a body. When you look at your hand, you see a part of a body. When you look at a picture on your passport, you see a picture of a body. Yes? So you know the body as bodily sensation, as perceptions, and you also know the body as memory and images. You know, you may have some images about yourself, or memory about yourself, or some view about yourself, mind images about yourself. So in your experience, and I'm sharing that with you, but you have to do your own contemplation. I cannot do it for you. Your own contemplation is your business. But if you contemplate, or when you contemplate what is the body, you will come to realize that you know the body. You know the body, you experience the body as sensations, perceptions, and thoughts. But what is this you that experiences the bodily sensation? What is this you that experiences perception or a thought? You see? What is this you? You're experiencing the body, but what is it that's experiencing the body? I am experiencing this perception of a hand. I'm experiencing this perception. I'm experiencing the toothache, for example. But I am not the toothache. I am not the hand. I am that which perceives. I am that which knows. I am the knowingness of the perception. I am the knowingness of the sensation, of the thought. That would be a correct contemplation of the body, which is quite different from contemplating how the body functions. Because how the body functions may be of interest to you if you are a physical education teacher or therapist, or a gymnast. If you're a gymnast or you're into sports, you need to know how the body functions so that you can perform your sport more correctly. But the contemplation of the self does not require your contemplation of how the body functions. But what is the body, and what is it that knows the world, body, mind? Meaning, what am I truly? So your contemplation will take you to that which knows the body as sensations, perceptions, and thoughts. I know there are a lot of practices that focus on breathing, all sorts of asanas, I think, they're about that relate to the body. The contemplation is an investigation, is an inquiry. And it is this inquiry, if it's done correctly, that will dispel ignorance. It will dispel ignorance. And when ignorance is dispelled, meaning ignorance being this belief that I am a body and that I'm a mortal body-mind. When ignorance is dispelled, then there is the revelation of truth, of love, beauty, and happiness that is available to you. Of course, we are the managers of the body, so we take care of the body. You know, we give the body nutrition, proper nutrition, proper rest. We're careful about what sort of thoughts we have a tendency to lean towards. But the contemplation of what am I truly is the spearhead that takes care of all of these secondary issues. Arshit, you're right. By self-inquiry, I can dissociate I from body. But how do you dissociate I from brain? Same thing. You dissociate I from body because you know body as bodily sensations, perceptions, and thought. And how do you know the brain? You know the brain as thought. Your only experience that you have of the brain is as thought. Meaning stuff that you've read or heard about the brain, or pictures you have seen in the book about the brain, or articles you've read about the brain. Brain is an organ, like the liver, like the pancreas, like the lungs. They operate together. All these organs operate together for the body-mind. Meaning the brain and all the other organs, the essential organs in the body, and even the lesser essential organs of the body. They function together. They're one whole, and they operate so that the instrument, the body-mind instrument functions. We can perceive a lion and we know it's dangerous because we've learned, the brain has learned that this animal with big teeth running very fast towards us is a dangerous event for the body. It's a dangerous event for the body, not for consciousness. And so the body knows how to take care of itself. There is intelligence, a divine intelligence at the body-mind level to take care of the body-mind. Only for a certain time. After 70, 80, 90 years, it just drops dead. That same intelligence that operates at the body-mind level is the same intelligence that operates the galaxies, that operates the weather, that operates the bees and the honey, and operates the day and the night and the weather. It's the same intelligence. So the brain, you don't need to make a big deal out of the brain, because what's the use of the brain without the lungs? Take out the lungs, you're dead. Same thing, you take out the brain, what's the use of the lungs? You take out the brain, you're dead, meaning the body is dead. So all these organs are essential for the body mind, but they're not essential for consciousness. But only when you mistake yourself to be the body mind, you will believe and feel that you depend on the brain, or that you depend on the lungs, or you depend on the liver. So you need to contemplate that you are consciousness, and that consciousness doesn't depend on the brain. The brain and all the thoughts and functioning and so on depend on consciousness. What is a brain without consciousness? What is a liver without consciousness? Nothing is without consciousness. And by consciousness, I don't mean the body functioning. Consciousness is not a body event. A body event is a temporal experience that belongs to the body, that's at the body level. But consciousness is the reality of all bodies, of all minds, of all phenomenal experiences. It's the reality of all phenomena is not a phenomenon. So the body can be sentient or can be insentient. When the body dies, it becomes insentient, it becomes a corpse. But the question is, does consciousness die? If consciousness dies with the body, that means consciousness is born. And you are consciousness, right? Given that you are consciousness, and assuming that you are born, what evidence do you have that you are born? In your experience. If you go and ask your mother, oh, mother, was I born? She's going to tell you, yeah, you're born in, such and such a year, such and such a place. But she's talking about the body. She's talking about the body that we call our cheat. She's not talking about you. She's mistaking you to be the body. But you can ask yourself, wait a minute, if I'm born, then I should know. I don't need to go ask the priest or ask my cousin or ask the rabbi or ask the guru. If I'm born, then I would know. Then I ask myself, well, what is my experience of me, I, consciousness being born? And you will find that there is no such experience. You've never experienced the birth of consciousness. You've never experienced the beginning of consciousness. You've never experienced the end of consciousness. You've experienced the end of the body, for example, in deep sleep. In deep sleep, there is no body, no mind, no world, no trees, no mother, no car, no house. But have you ever experienced the end of consciousness? It's a question you have to ask yourself. And if you have not experienced the beginning of consciousness, nor the end of consciousness, then maybe you can be open to the possibility that consciousness does not begin and does not end, meaning it is eternal. What we refer to as I, meaning I consciousness, is eternal. To rest with that, contemplate that, remain open to that. Are there any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much for your company, your presence today, and wish you all the best. And we'll see you again. I'm not sure, if not this Sunday, then we'll see you next Thursday. Okay, thank you very much for your questions and your love. Okay, bye, Isaac. Bye, everybody.